one side of the competition and deliberately keep the other agents out. Now, Kenyans are calling us for the last 5 days. Kenyans are anxious to conclude this election, to conclude the tally. This kind of behavior, frankly, is not helping anybody. It only serves to agitate Kenya further. And we want, honestly, to plead with IEBC, do the right thing for your own country. It is unnecessary. It is so unnecessary to bring temperatures up by locking out agents and observers who are already accredited. And if you did not wish for them to be there, you should not have accredited them in the first place. Frankly, it is common sense.
Do you have other agents from Azimio Lomoja?
We are all here.
The chairman of presidential conference.
We are all here.
This is his job.
But it's not us you should be asking. Ask the IEBC what they have to.
All right, live pictures there outside the Bomas of Kenya, where we're seeing Laikipia Governor Nderitu Mureithi. He's still the Laikipia Governor, though he lost that seat to Joshua Irungu of UDA, saying that they wanted to be given access into the Bomas of Kenya. They seems to have been blocked out there. You can see James Orengo, CI Governor-elect. As you can see Sospito Jamong there. You can see Elisha Odhiambo, Member of Parliament for Game-elect. All of them trying to make their way into the Bomas of Kenya, but that has been stopped. So, Eric, when you see such scenes, what comes to your mind? Because now there was a direct pronouncement by the IEBC chairperson that all who are not significant personnel are not supposed to be at the Bomas of Kenya. But now the politicians are locked outside, and this sort of scene sometimes riles their supporters.
I mean, putting the country in a very, very difficult position. We understand that perhaps as the political leadership that they have, they could be having certain anxieties. But the way the process is designed is such that there must be some sort of order and control in terms of how the processes are managed. Yeah. And the most critical thing that to appreciate at this particular juncture is that unlike in previous elections, what is being transmitted from the polling center and the result at the polling center is the final result is actually the form that contains the results. That is the Form 34A. That form ideally should be signed by all the party agents and a copy thereof given to the respective agents of the different political parties that are there. The assumption we make is that each political party then invested in having agents at each polling station so that they can be able, one, to witness the voting process from the beginning to the end, the counting process, the development of that form, and the transmission process.
Yeah.
And so therefore, with that presumption in mind, you would assume or you would presume that each political party has the same set of results. Beyond that, in the event that the political parties may not have had an agent at each and every polling station, there is also the public portal which contains all the Form 34As that were sent from the different polling stations. So what should be happening, or what is happening at Bomas, is a question of looking at the Form 34A and the Form 34B, which contains the constituency tally of the various polling stations in that constituency, to confirm that the result from polling station A reflects in 34B and they tally.
Yeah.
So when we understand that that is the process, then what we should be concerned with, and what each political party should be concerned with, is having agents at the tallying center,
yeah,
who have the necessary information in terms of the forms that they got either from their agents, those that they have probably downloaded from the IEBC website, and the physical form 34A and 34B that have been presented or are now being presented by the returning officers for purposes of verification.
Yeah.
So that is what we should be concerned with, that we are checking this. Does it tally? If it tallies, we say, announce the results. If it does not tally, then we say, where is the inconsistency? Where is the discrepancy? And how is it resolved? The beauty about it is that the Supreme Court has already interpreted to us what is the primary result. So the primary result is 34A. So what we are seeing, in my view, is a little bit unnecessary because it does not aid the process that is going on at Bomas in terms of verification.
Yeah.
What it only does is that it is raising temperatures unnecessarily. So as long as there are sufficient facilities afforded to the political parties to verify those results, I think that it would be prudent, given our history, that we avoid raising temperatures and we allow this process to go on. Although that is not to say that any allegations that are being made have no merit.
Yeah.
We are not speaking about the allegations that they might be there. And any allegation in terms of voter irregularity should be treated with the utmost sensitivity that it requires and ought to be handled procedurally and expeditious and in the most expeditious way, so that we avoid tension and an anxiety. But I think that if then you allow a significantly heavy presence of political actors, given the way we have passion for the leadership, then it might affect the integrity of the verification process.
Yeah.
And so IEBC also ought to be given the leeway to be able to control its own processes by saying, yes, you want access, we will give access, and because they have a way of giving access through accreditation. So those who do not have the necessary accreditation, even if they are political leaders, then should keep away from the center, because otherwise then when you lose control and you create pandemonium, whereas we know that in this country, elections have previously been nullified. So that we know that in the event that there are any irregularities, and that is the reason why that the scrutiny should be allowed to go on in an environment which is free of any intimidation and harassment, but with all the facilities being accorded to the parties, is that it is actually at that scrutiny that you collect evidence to support your allegations of irregularities.
So not at this tail end. So whether they're there or not,
yes, and I'm also saying that at that stage of verification, if there are any discrepancies, you want your agents to be there to note the discrepancies and collect that evidence and probably give it to either the chief agent or to the party lawyers, so that we can say, you see, our forms are saying this, the forms that they have are saying this is a discrepancy, and please note it for purposes of taking action on it in the event that it is not resolved to your satisfaction.
Yeah, but having been an observer before, should IBC have preempted this and stopped them pronto before? You know, before that they were allowed. And then a day later, that's when Chebukati said that now we want the politicians out of this, making it seem like there was something there. Should they have just made this clear from the onset that we only want the agents, ROs, deputy ROs, period, instead of changing midway after realizing that there was a bit of a fracas there?
Of course, that is a fault on their part. But we always say that, you know, two faults do not make a right. And so therefore, suppose that they just extended goodwill.
Yeah.
And then they've realized that the goodwill is affecting their ability to discharge their functions. Then they have every right to say that we will not extend this goodwill because it was extended, but now it is affecting our ability to work. But of course, the right and proper thing would have been, because, for example, myself and a few members of the Law Society have accreditation to observe at the Tallying Center, and we freely move in and out because of that accreditation. So perhaps they should have done it in a much neater way so that you only allow someone who is accredited to get into the Tallying Center. But that said and done, I think, for me, the most critical issue that is happening at the Tallying Center is actually a constitutional requirement that you must verify the tallies that have come from the polling center. And I think if I were to advise someone that the best thing that you can do is to be able to participate in that process effectively, ensure that the necessary facilities have been afforded to your agents, so that then they are able to pick evidence of any discrepancies, because it is that evidence that then can be, in the case of an election petition for the presidential, be presented to the Supreme Court to support the petition, just like the opponents are there to collect evidence to support their petition in the event that they are declared either the winners or losers. So both sets of agents are actually engaged in that process. Quality assurance, confirming that the right figures that were announced at the polling stations are the ones that are being announced at IEBC. And in the event of any discrepancy, noting those discrepancies for purposes of remedial action at a later time.
Yeah, I believe there's still a standoff there, but it seems that those who are accredited are being allowed to work. Anyang' Nyong'o has come in, the Kisumu governor-elect, like Nderitu Mureithi has also been allowed in, Siaya governor-elect also, James Orengo, they are being allowed in. I think this IBC and the police are now sifting through. Only those who have the accreditation will be allowed inside there. But Dr. Molo, what are your thoughts when you see such scenes from the Bomas of Kenya at this particular time? It's a critical moment. Kenyans are anxious. People are waiting for results 5 days after the elections. And then there's still a standoff by the gate. And you can see the heavy security deployment. Still negotiation seems to be going on there on who should come in and who should not.
I think this is causing a lot of anxiety among the Kenyans, especially when they voted very peacefully and they were told that, you know, this time everything has been put in place. So from what we're seeing, you know, there's no one talking, but you can see some people are not happy, they're being allowed, some people are not being allowed. So I think Kenyans are very afraid of what might happen today, tomorrow, or Tuesday, you know, because of what they're seeing on television. Now, when you go to the supermarkets, people are shopping and people are stocking their houses because they don't know whether tomorrow what's going to happen. And even as much as the Ministry of Education says that, you know, we'll have the announcement and now the schools will not be open on Monday as it was planned before. The schools are going to reopen on Thursday. And I'm looking at it, I'm saying that most parents, they still don't have a lot of trust that, you know, we'll have peace after the declaration of the winner. And you'll find most parents still keeping their children in the house. I can imagine with this kind of situation, how does a parent think that you'll send your child to school in Mombasa or your child will return to school in Malaba? So it shows how we still don't have that trust in our systems. And we know very well that, if either of the politicians are happy, they can move to the Supreme Court. And having these institutions in place, and people are not just seated back and says that, yes, we are fine. A friend of mine told me, if you have the M-Pesa and you can send out 200,000, you can send out 500,000 to reach somewhere in a different part of the country, and you can sit back and relax. But this is because we don't have enough trust in our system, and that's why you're seeing all these politicians on both sides and trying to get in and getting out. So it's really don't really help in reducing the anxiety that the ordinary mwananchi already has.
Yeah, I think they've now been allowed to come into the Bomas of Kenya there. They've not addressed the media in any way. We're keeping an eye on them to see how far they go. That's been sifted through. Everybody who's been accredited are the ones who've been allowed in there. But we want to talk about the Chapter 6 of the Constitution, leadership and integrity. Why has this been such a difficult thing to implement in this country? Or is it because integrity itself is a gray area? It comes with perception.
Well, if you are making the law, it's highly unlikely that you will legislate something that is going to be harmful to yourself. And when you look at the Leadership and Integrity Act, you see that it's extremely watered down to the extent that you cannot boldly proclaim that Chapter 6 of the Constitution in this country is alive. I think it is in ICU or HDU, but it is not alive. And there's a need for a conversation around that area, especially after the elections are done. We need to review some of the decisions that have come from the courts with regards to the question of leadership and integrity. Look at the enforcement and mechanisms that are under the Act, and actually ask ourselves whether we truly believe in Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and try and infuse an element of law reform to bring some robustness and to inject some life into Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Yeah. Dr. Molo, what do you think? How can we fix this and ensure that integrity becomes central? And as much as having that Chapter 6 of leadership and integrity is there, nobody seems to be, there's no measure, there's no yardstick to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, I think when it comes to leadership, that Chapter 6, I think at the moment what is lacking is the implementation, because when if you see corruption at the high political level, most of the time you'll be punished depending on which side of the political divide you are in. So if Kenyans are looking at the top level whereby people are getting away with corruption, people are getting away with looting public funds, then how are you going to implement it at the local level? And even when we had our devolved governance, we are seeing that, at the county level, there's high levels of corruptions and people appear in court, but you never see the end result of that kind of a process. So this is something that will really have to reflect on it. And the new leader, the new president will really show us that they're really committed to accountability. They really want accountability in the system, and they want to clean it up, and we want to sanitize the process, and that's something which is not easy to do.
Yeah, but how much of this is to blame on the institutions, especially the judiciary, for example? Most people have said that the judiciary is the weakest link when it comes to serving justice here in Kenya. Do you agree, first of all?
I don't agree with that assessment, because you see, the judiciary is at the tail end. The judiciary is not an implementer. What the judiciary does is actually have a quality assurance mechanism that in the event of a prosecution, that the person who's been brought there actually deserves to be prosecuted. So there are challenges there, obviously. I think to a certain extent also, some of the decisions that have come from the courts have also been of low quality, to the extent that you actually tend to think that they have been motivated by other factors other than the merits of those cases. But that said and done, the most unfortunate situation that we are in is that for the last few years, the fight against corruption had been weaponized. And so then it becomes extremely difficult to be able to give a proper and genuine assessment on the performance of the judiciary when the cases that have been presented in court are actually cases that should not have been presented in court, or if they have been presented in court, they have been rushed and the investigations have not been as thorough.
But is that a matter of fact, or is that perception as well?
It's a matter of fact. It is a matter of fact, because when the cases are going on and there is no evidence, or where after such high profile a presentation of charges, several years down the line, and we say this because we have seen this, charges are dropped against certain of those of the people who have been charged.
Yeah, but there are those who argue that it's those same security operators that bungle the entire prosecution's level, where they're supposed to get witnesses, they're supposed to get evidence, they simply don't.
That is true, and that is why I'm saying, because you know, these Kenyans that are in charge of these institutions also don't come from us. Yeah, so they come from us. They come from us, but in terms of fidelity to the ideals of Chapter 6, we have a problem. Okay. As the psyche of the country, the entire psyche of the country, yes. Yeah. When someone gets elected and is your friend, the first thing you're thinking of is, you know, it is my time to eat. You know, I have this. Are you able to arrange that for us? But unfortunately for us, we have that luxury. But for those who have been given that responsibility, then they have to ensure that they discharge that mandate. And so we will have this pendulum swinging from one side to the other side. But the experience which we've had is that some of the cases that have been presented before court have not been well investigated. Some are extremely well investigated, but we've had instances of, witness interferences and all those situations. So there is a whole lot that needs to be done within that chain to ensure that as a country we are able to implement Chapter 6. But the most important thing for me is that there must be a will, the political will to enforce Chapter 6 must start at the top. If there is no will to enforce Chapter 6 at the top, the rest of the country would be wobbly on this.
Yeah, Dr. Molo, is this simply a lack of goodwill? And we can see there from the Bomas of Kenya, there seems to be another standoff. So they made it through the first clearance, but now this is just by the entrance of the National Tallying Center, where there seems to be another standoff there in terms of who should come in and who should not. Security operators holding their position there, despite all the governors and politicians who are there donning their accreditation. There seems to be another level of clearance there that has to be done before they come inside. But we were talking about, Dr. Molo, the lack of goodwill, that they were saying that is the main reason why Chapter 6 doesn't seem to be effective in this nation.
Yes, in this country, I think it's political will that you need to fight corruption. And I think corruption is at all levels. It's at the high level, at the political level, at the cabinet, at the parliament, whereby parliamentarians are even bribed to pass bills in parliament. And they're saying that even bribing parliamentarian can be as cheap as 10,000 Kenya shillings. And this corruption, we also see it in the public service. You know, the other day you saw what was happening within the government, the treasury, whereby they find all these people have got money which is not matching what they are earning. And it trickled down. It starts from the national and it goes down to the local level. But even if we are told that this specific person has stolen this amount of money, Kenyans are very fast in saying that now our community is under attack, our person is under attack. And most of the time when this politician or this particular individual steals public funds, they do not necessarily share it at the community level. So I think we need sensitization and some civic education at the local level to tell us that, you know, when all these resources are lost at the national or whatever level, how does it impact at the local level? Because there's corruption. That means that if a woman, the other time I was in Isiolo, and I asked them, what are some of the issues they're facing? And they told us here, when a woman is pregnant and wants to give birth, sometimes to get to the hospital is a problem. But I told them, you have the ambulance and, the county government has invested in all health facilities. But they tell us, when you call them, they say that they don't have petrol to come and take you. So they tell me in an Isiolo, in the rural area, it will take the woman to take a bicycle, take a camel, take a motorbike. And by the time they reach the hospital, they're being told, we cannot attend to you because we don't have razor blade and we don't have cotton wool. So if we had a system which was working really well, then even at the local level and whatever part of the countries, we'll be having health facilities which can serve the local populations. If we were managing our resources well, that we can realize, the free primary education. And here we've been told that, in certain manifestos, they're telling us, Kenyans, you can have free primary education, you can have free secondary education, and you can have free university education. And when they're put to task that, where is this money going to come from? And they're telling us that 2 billion is lost per day. So all this money which is lost per day, they can channel it to different. But if the politicians, even the president, know that we are losing this amount of
Hold that thought
billions
for
per
a
day.
bit. We need to explain what's going on right now at the Bomas of Kenya. That is the AU Observer Mission led by the Ernest Bai Koroma, who's the head of the AU Commerce Election Observer Mission, and former President Sierra Leone here in Kenya, ensuring that just observing the entire electoral process, they just went into the office with the IBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati. That is inside the Bomas of Kenya. Outside the Bomas of Kenya, there seems to be another standoff there where the politicians somehow being directed to a different entrance after having been stopped at the main entrance gate. Now they got accreditation. They're now heading through another exit 2, I believe. That is the second entry point where they're going to be observing the verification process that's happening there, just moments after the AU Commerce Election Observer Mission, led by former President of Sierra Leone, Ernest Bai Koroma, visited the area and went in to speak to Wafula Chebukati, who's the IBC chairperson. Sorry, you're finishing your thoughts on this. Right. They're happening in real time, so we just have to keep updating.
Yes, so we're being told that a lot of billions are being lost on a daily basis. And some of these big plans, actually, the money can be gotten. If we have a accountable system, then we can save all this money and provide, transfer these resources to the health sector, the education sector, and the agricultural sector. But one of the questions you asked that, if you know all this money is being lost within the system, why are you not acting on it at different levels? So those are some of the questions that, come when it comes to Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So going forward, Deuri, what then should be implemented in terms of ensuring that both the people and the politicians are held to account? Should there be a change in the law to tighten this much more? What happens there now? And by the way, you can see that is a holding room. They've not been allowed into the tallying center. The politicians are being held in one of the holding rooms at the Bomas of Kenya. I believe that's seeking clearance before they head into the tallying center.
Trevor, kidogo nadhani kabla wakili ya kujibu hilo swali lako, kama tulivyoona pale utaona viongozi, kuna usalama wa hali ya juu IBC imeweka, yani watu wasiingie mule ndani. Kuna mtu hapa anauliza, Amazo amesema hongera kwa IBC kwa kuweka mikakati hiyo ya usalama, lakini mbona mikakati kama hii ya usalama haikuwekwa katika nyanjani kule kuhakikisha kwamba vile visa ambavyo vilikuwa vinashuhudiwa havikushuhudiwa? Pengine maoni yako ni yapi kuhusiana na swala hilo? Manake hapa ndio kilele, lakini tunaona usalama uko sawa. Kule ambako kulikuwa kumeripotiwa michakato mingi imetokea, hakukuwa na usalama huo hadi hivi.
Sijui ni sehemu gani hizo, lakini kwa maoni yangu katika uchaguzi huu polisi wameweza kuonyesha
Restraint.
Standards, restraint and standards ambazo si za kawaida. Wamefanya kazi nzuri kwa zile stations, especially zile stations ambazo tulikuwa tunafanya observation. Walifanya kazi nzuri sana, na ripoti ambayo tulitoa kama Law Society ya observation tuliwapongeza kwa kazi nzuri. Wamejaribu sana kuonyesha political neutrality, sana kuonyesha professionalism, na hata hapa kwenye ili jukwaa ukiona vile wanafanya kazi ni they are giving security to everyone. So nadhani walifanya vizuri, lakini nao unajua visa pia haviwezi kosa kutokea kwa sababu elections ziko na emotions mingi sana, so visa vitatokea, lakini generally speaking ukilinganisha hii election na election ya 2017, polisi wameweza kufanya kazi nzuri sana kuliko vile ilivyokuwa miaka iliyopita.
Hai, nadhani daktari alikuwa anazungumza kitu kabla nimkatize, pengine achukue fursa hii kuendelea naye.
Yeah, we're talking about making sure that integrity is central in the entire process and in the nation as well. What needs to be done? Should there be an amendment in the laws, or what happens now? How do we entrench this in the nation?
As a law society, one of the things which we have purposed to undertake after this electoral process is to actually have an audit of the efficacy of Chapter 6. We intend to have a national conversation around this area so that we can look at Chapter 6, we can look at the attendant laws that have been promulgated pursuant to Chapter 6, and the history of our enforcement, to try and see where have we got it right and where have we got it wrong. And if then we need to amend the law, then we carry out that amendment. There's been a lot of discussion among our colleagues that one of the things that we did was to give integrity as a provision with the right hand and then take it away with the second, by making this rider that for as long as you you have a right of appeal, then you can still vie. So that is something that we want to look at, and we all know the history of it because we came from, we promulgated our constitution coming from a history of a very repressive regime. So maybe the conversation should be that having made some strides in terms of freeing our institutions from executive overreach, is that a provision that we need to maintain within the law? Because it makes a mockery of the law that, yes, you have been convicted, but because you have preferred an appeal, and the appeal is ongoing, that you still have the right to vie. So those are discussions which we would be having and engaging and looking at practices across other jurisdictions and what they do, with a view of determining whether the law as it is ripe for reform, or we should continue as it were, and perhaps that maybe the lag in implementation lies not in the inadequacy of the law, but in the inadequacy of the implementing agencies.
Yeah. And just to add something onto that, I think when we have devolved governance, we've been able to have the 47 counties with 47 governors, and actually we can pick up some counties which have tried to be more transparent and accountable to the people. For example, when we look at a county like Makueni, And, it's actually it's been a case study of how having a good governance can lead, can be good. Because when you look at a county like Makueni, whereby they were able to invest the money in good healthcare services, they were able to kind of like start some manufacturing plants for mango and all that. But you could also just pick some counties whereby all the time they were on the headlines, they were kind of corruption all the time. So actually sometimes accountability and actually eradicating corruption starts at the leadership. It can be the leadership at the county level. It can also be the national level. So everything we're going to do is not about the law. What about creating that culture of accountability? How can we go to our school and tell children that, corruption is not a good thing? And someone said currently in Kenya here, you can just sit back and say, that one is my relatives. You see all those apartments, he owns them. But when you're telling the story, someone asks you, what does your relative do? Actually, the income of your relative and the investment does not match, and we take it to be something which is very normal. So we also have to have a culture change.
Okay, so it's a culture change that we need on that. But what you did mention the issue around the corridors of justice, which some people say the weakest link. Of course, they wouldn't agree. He's the LSK president. But what do you think? Is the judiciary the weakest link? Dr. Molo.
Oh,
yeah.
It was not addressed. Yes, I think the judiciary can also be a weak link. There's been a lot of reforms in the judiciary system, and Kenyans were starting to have more confidence. But you still have this say that, if you can hire a judge, then why can't you hire a lawyer? And actually, when you look at the local level, if you are at the village level and you're found stealing a chicken, definitely you'll go through the court processes and everything. But if you steal lots of billions, you find that that case won't go everywhere. You're able to get the best lawyers, and we're even saying that you can still be able to kind of bribe the judges. So as much as we've had reforms in the judiciary, that trust in the judiciary is not still very high. So that's an area that we need to look at as we go ahead.
Yeah, this research that you want to do, will it also capture the role of the judiciary in the entire process and maybe possibly suggest timelines so that we don't have to drag cases for that long?
Yeah, definitely. Because we have to view the entire chain.
Yeah.
There are weaknesses in the chain. And Trevor, is not to say that the judiciary doesn't have its fair share of troubles. It has. In fact, we are witnessing a rather high incidence of corruption in the judiciary itself. So we are not saying that the judiciary is like Caesar's wife above reproach. All we are saying is that it is not the correct characterization to say that the judiciary is the weakest link, because there are other weaker links in the process. And you know what they say, that the strength of a chain is as good as its weakest link. So yeah. that is where we are now having that conversation. So those are things that we are going to look at. And let me perhaps put this in context. When you have a charge sheet and you have about 10 or 15 corruption suspects, and assume that the 10 or 15 each hire a lawyer, so you have 15 lawyers who all have to cross-examine each and every witness, and perhaps maybe you have 20 or 30 witnesses. So even if you were to do this case on a day-to-day basis, it is not even logically possible to conclude it within a year.
Yeah.
So the question of timelines, of course, is something that has concerned us, the length of time that it takes. And sometimes you find that the people who have been charged have a small peripheral role in the loss of money. So that perhaps there is a need to look at it and say, can we be a little bit much more strategic so that we go for the persons bearing the greatest responsibility for the loss of public funds, and for these other ones, even if they may have been aiding and abetting the process in one way or the other, they are dealt with administratively.
Yeah.
So we need to have that conversation, because for as long as we continue doing things the way we are doing them, then we are not going to achieve the objectives that we seek to achieve in terms of enforcement.
We even saw an amendment in the in the Companies Act of beneficial ownership, but still that has not captured the essence of the entire process of vetting, plus knowing who really is the beneficial owner of the companies and the people who are accused. But now I'd like to give you a chance for closing remarks as we wind up on this end. Dr. Mola, I'll start with you. 5 days Kenyans have voted. What is your rallying call to them, everybody who's watching you today?
Okay. Thank you so much, Trevor, for having invited me, and also for the Kenyans who've been listening to us. I think we've had various discussions this morning up to this afternoon. And as we come to the end of this tallying process, which can be tomorrow or come on Tuesday, Kenyans should respect the outcome of the election, because every election we are going to have a winner and a loser. And what is important is that we need to preach peace. And we also have the judicial system. We have the Supreme Court in place, which is in place at the moment and which we did not have in the year 2007. So I think we really need to exhaust this apparatus. But there's no room for violence. We only have one Kenya, and we are one people, and therefore there's going to be life beyond these elections.
Okay.
Thank
Eric?
you.
Thank you, Trevor, for inviting me. I think my message to the Kenyan people and those who are watching us is that we need to exercise patience, we need to exercise restraint, and most of all, we need to remember that this is a country that we have chosen the Constitution to be the supreme law. We have chosen the rule of law to be the way and the life in which we conduct our affairs, and we ask that we place our trust in those institutions. I would also wish to make a plea to the IEBC to try and hasten the process that they are currently undertaking, and to also be extremely careful about perceptions by way of changing rules in between the process. If, as yesterday, they were allowing local observers, and today that there are claims that the local observers are being denied access in preference to the international observers, that is, of course, extremely deplorable and should be reversed, because when you change the rules of the process midway, then you create suspicion in the process. But we do hope that they would be able to conclude this and give the people their choice, and that whatever choice would be made, that we will accept them as the choice of the Kenyans, and if there are any disputes, then the disputes will be channeled through the proper constitutional mechanisms.
All right. Thank you for making time this evening, Dr. Nancy Omolo, Gender and Political Affairs Expert, and Eric Theuri, LSK President, for speaking to us today. We are about to wrap it up here, myself and Moana. Here's what we know so far. So IEBC has already tallied presidential results from 182 constituencies out of the 291. There's 109 remaining. We know that David Mwaure Wahiga of Agano Party has conceded defeat. We've just gotten a bit of a good update here from Professor George Wajakoya from the Roots Party. He says, as you're aware, President candidate Professor George Wajakoya is one among the 4 Kenyans who are seeking the highest office. The first phase was exercised by citizenry. The second phase is being exercised by IEBC. Now, the presidential candidate George Wajakoya is calling on Kenyans to maintain peace and accord the IEBC the patience it deserves in tallying the votes. All right? That's where we leave it for now. Ama vipi Mwana, tutoke sasa?
Na bila shaka, na kuna kitu kimoja umesahau kusema hapo kupitia kwenye hiyo taarifa ya Wajakoya. Amesema kwamba ana imani kwamba anashinda uchaguzi huu. Ana imani kwamba anashinda uchaguzi huu, na kisha baadaye atazungumza na taifa pale atakapokuwa matangazo rasmi yametolewa na mwenyekiti wa IEBC Wafula Chebukati. Kwa hivyo Wakenya tumsubiri Wajakoya pamoja na wengine wengi ambao watakuwa wanafanya pengine kutoa matangazo yao. Kwa sasa basi sisi hatuna la ziada ila tukusema asante sana kwa muda wako ambao umekuwa nasi kuanzia saa 5 kamili Trevor.
Mpaka sasa.
Na bila shaka.
Masaa 5. 5 hours straight.
Ndio maana yake hiyo. Naambiwa ukiamua kuingia shambani lima mpaka pale ambapo utafika utaona hapa chakula nitakachokipata kimetosha.
Hati maji ukiyavulia nguo.
Yaoge. Itabidi uyaoge. Lakini sidhani kama anyway.
Nenda hapo bwana.
Wacha tumalizie hapo mtazamaji.
Endelee kuwa na imani kuwa Wajakoya.
Wajakoya yuaja.
Yuaja.
Ni vizuri kuishi na imani. Ni vizuri kuishi na imani.
We leave you with live pictures from the Bomas of Kenya, and as soon as anything happens, you will know it right here on Kenya's Choice 2022. Bye for now.
Nah.